Okay, well, we're talking a lot about the gospel here, and obviously that's a huge priority for us as Christians. We want to obey the Great Commission. We want to make disciples and teach them the gospel. There have been theistic evolutionary organizations and people who've said that if you have a hostile attitude towards evolution, it can actually hinder how you go about evangelism and hold you up. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, that's a notion that we can't lay too much of a burden on the seeker. This idea that we have to strip away any ideas that they might not like and so on. And if we tell people that, well, you need to believe that the earth is young and that there was a global flood to become a Christian, and you have to give up evolution. Christianity involves giving up anything that is incompatible with Scripture.
Yeah.
Not just evolution. But let me back up a bit. A lot of people have this question. I know this is coming. Do you need to believe in biblical creation to be a Christian? The answer is no. You don't. It is massively inconsistent, as we've been talking about here, but you don't need to. What do you need to do to be saved? If you proclaim with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. There is no statement in there about believing in a historical Adam or anything like that. Those are all critical to the gospel, but you can be a Christian and have inconsistencies in your thinking. All of us do, actually.
Blessed inconsistencies.
Blessed inconsistencies.
I've heard them called.
As they've been called, yes. I know there's Christians, there's faithful Christians who believe in an abortion. That's massively inconsistent. The Bible clearly says that from the point of conception you're human, therefore abortion is murder. That's massively inconsistent with being a Christian. You're inconsistent in what the Bible tells us in that area. And that's just an example. There's many other things. If I knew where my inconsistencies were,
we'd fix them.
We'd try to fix them, right? That's what sanctification is all about. We're progressively sanctified and more holy. But we can live with these inconsistencies. Many of our own scientists at CMI globally here, they were evolutionists. They'd get their degrees. They'd go to the universities. Evolutionists. I worked with a gentleman who was an atheist. Got his PhD, was a hippie, had hair down to his lower back and stuff, and he became a Christian, but he was still an evolutionist. So can over time he worked that out, but are we going to say that he wasn't really a Christian until he worked out Genesis? No, he became a believer and then recognized the inconsistencies. And then began working those through. He's a geologist. He was working for us years ago, a geologist, and he got in touch with some of our geologists in the Australian office, rather, and they told him, think about what a global flood would do. You're having trouble with understanding. How can all these rocks fit into a short time frame and so on, not millions of years, because that's what he was instructed in, millions of years, evolution and so on, and that was the key for him. And so he worked that through. And many of our scientists have similar stories. They became believers, true believers, but they had inconsistencies and they worked those through.
Yeah.
So that's so no, you don't need to believe in biblical creation to be a Christian, but it's massively inconsistent. And for those Christians who are watching or listening, we would certainly encourage them to visit creation.com. If you believe millions of years can be added into the Bible. We've discussed a little bit of that in the last few minutes here, why they're incompatible. And there's a lot more information, a lot more questions can be answered about how God created recently in 6 days. And there's no evolution in the Bible. And so, we'd encourage people to go to the website at least.
Absolutely. And that's, we always want to approach this discussion, especially when we're having one-on-one conversations with people, understanding that we are all a work in progress. And a lot of us, I bet all of us actually, even at this ministry, had to grapple with this at some point or another in our Christian walk, had to actually sit down and say, what do I make of all of this?
Yeah. Because that's the popular idea out there. We've all been taught that. We've all heard it through the TV when we were kids and that kind of thing. And so, to get on board with biblical creation, you need to work through those issues. We've all, like you said, we've all gone through that to some extent. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd really like to share just that my own journey with that. Even growing up, I loved dinosaurs. I still love dinosaurs. Who doesn't?
Most of us at CMI
yeah,
do.
exactly. So we're in the right place here. But I remember even growing up, I had a really hard time because I understood biblical creation. I understood what Genesis said, but I also was reading all these secular books about dinosaurs that very clearly split. You've got the Mesozoic era, you've got the Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous, and one of the struggles for me later on was realizing that I had two parallel histories of the world that were coexisting in my own mind. And I won't lie, it was really hard to get those reconciled. And I tried a lot of the stuff that we're talking about today. So I'm not sitting here, neither of us are sitting here saying, oh, you must be dumb if you think this. We certainly don't believe that because we've been through it.
Right.
And it's hard, but it's a road worth going down. So
it is, yeah.
And that kind of brings us to the question, though. In your view, you don't feel that rejecting evolution means rejecting science. And this is significant because people say, well, if you're evangelizing and you're using creation, then you're rejecting science.
Rejecting science, yes. They label evolution as science, the theistic evolutionists. And, well, all evolutionists. Evolution equals science.
Yeah.
Now, not quite. In fact, the origins debate is much more, it's not really a scientific debate. We could say things like, I might step on some toes now. There's no such thing as creation science.
Okay, I'm a little worried about my job right now.
Yeah. Okay, let me explain that. As I was saying, it's not really a debate about the science. Science involves observations. You observe things in the rocks, in the fossils, in the atmosphere, in the oceans, in life, in non-life, and so on. You make observations. Pretty much everybody agrees with the observations. There isn't a whole lot of debate about what's being observed. The debate is about the history that's applied to the observations. For example, let's take fossils, for example. When someone finds a fossil, it doesn't come with a little label on it that says, hi, I'm 70 million years old, and my favorite color is blue, and I like to eat spaghetti, and I like long walks on the beach at sunset with my sweetie, or anything like. None of that information comes with the fossil.
You have a bone that's made of rock.
Yes.
And you got to work out what this is from that.
Yeah. And nobody looks at the fossil in the ground and says, no, that's not a fossil. It's a bicycle. Mm-hmm. It's a fossil in some rock. There's not a whole lot of debate about the observations. The debate comes in with, is this thing was it really buried 70 million years old? Is it really 70 million years old? Or is it 70,000 years old? Or is it 7,000 years old? See, you can debate that because it's not observed. It's a story about the past to try to explain how that thing got buried in the rock. And because it's in the past and nobody has observed the past, we can debate about it. That's where the debate in creation evolution happens. So it's not a debate about science. It's a debate about history. And there's still some debates about science, but about the observations.
Those are out of scope for today.
Yeah, we can do that another time.
This has been a fantastic conversation.
Yeah, it's been fun.
So appreciative of it. Yeah, we are going to be offering a free stream of our award-winning documentary, Evolution's Achilles Heels. What can you tell us about this documentary?
Yeah, it is a great documentary. So there's a book as well. The book is authored by 9 PhD scientists. In the video, we interview 15 PhD scientists. So these are scientists that give the evidence against evolution, scientific evidence against evolution. The documentary blows evolution out of the water scientifically. So I would say this is a brilliant resource for university students, well, going as low as even like high school students. You're starting to learn about evolution and science and so on. And it's also a great resource for parents or grandparents who've had their kids or grandkids go to university and leave the church. I hear that over and over again, traveling to different churches. People, moms and dads and grandparents they'll come up to me afterwards and, little Johnny, he grew up in the church and then he went to university. He doesn't come to church anymore. He thinks that we're weird because we believe creation. This can be used as a tool because they go to university, again, they hear about evolution, and it draws them away from Christianity. Mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, you're old-fashioned. You don't know what you're talking about. I know the truth. Evolution happened. It's a scientific fact. This documentary blows that out of the water. I mean, it's a great tool that grandparents or parents can use with their wayward children.
And we'll have a link to that free stream in the description. Well, Richard, thank you so much.
This has been fun.